Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. Never have to cut you out like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try to marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they feel strange. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, powered by Blue Wire. Shout out to the new company. My name is Michael Sean Dugard. You guys know where to follow me on whatever Elon Musk is calling that app these days. My @ name has not changed. It's also right under my chin for everyone who's on YouTube. @ Mike Dugard, MikeDugar. Thanks for the love and support on our YouTube channel. Seahawks Man-to-Man is the name of the channel. That is Seahawks Man, the number 2 man. That is also our handle on TikTok and on Instagram. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, every button that supports us, press it. Just do that. And we thank you in advance. Chris, go ahead and talk to him.
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kidd. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at CKIDD206, and that's CKid206.
All right, sorry for the delay, everybody. We've talked so much free agency, Sam Darnold, everything, but that's what happens when you trade away your QB1 and you trade DK. We don't get as much time to talk about draft, but we are going to do that for the next few weeks with draft later this month. As you guys know, we love having guests on, and I want to mix up the voices sometimes, get as many ball knowers as I can. So making his debut to the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast to talk about the NFL draft with us, we have the homie Kyron Samuels. What up, brother? Welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Happy to be on here. Been a minute since we saw each other in person. We linked up at the 2023 Senior Bowl, so always happy to do this. And it's nice to meet you too, Chris. So always down to talk some football and get into the nitty-gritty.
Yes, sir.
There we go. Yes. Kai mentioned we met down the Senior Bowl. My first time at the Senior Bowl. That took me a day to get to from Seattle. We ate at a good fish house, I think. Linked up through the homie Tashawn Reed. Shout out to the homie Tashawn. Kai is an NFL and college football writer and analyst for On SI, former all-conference lineman at Jacksonville State. Shout out to your boys. Also, certified ball knower, man. Kai knows his stuff, man. We was at dinner chopping it up. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this. I gotta get him on the pod. Shouldn't have taken 2 years. That's on me, but I'm glad we finally got you on.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here for sure. So I had a good time down there, and I love following your stuff because a lot of these beat guys are just boring. I'm gonna be honest. So it's good to see somebody that's entertaining as well as does their job very good. So I always like supporting your work.
Appreciate that, man. So here's how we're gonna do this one. In the past, we've done prospect or position specific prospect dive in, but for 2 reasons I want to pivot from that. The first reason is because I'm under the impression after talking to people around the Seahawks that they're just going to go best player available. They know they have some needs at certain spots, but they're just like, we just got to take the best dudes and let the chips fall where they may. Because if he can ball, he'll get on the field, as opposed to pushing someone up the board just because we need a guard or a center or whatever. And also, John Schneider told us this center class is trash. Whether that's true or not, that's just what he says, and that's how he'll operate. So we'll go with that. The second thing is, and this is why I'm really excited to get you on. I remember this quick short story is I was talking to Randy Mueller, former Seahawks GM, the guy who drafted Walter Jones. And I was doing a story on the drafting of Walter Jones. I was fascinated by it because Big Walt didn't play that long at Florida State. And even then, he was in a rotation at Florida State, too. So it was like a big deal inside the building that they were going to take him. They took him with like a very high pick, and that was at a time where teams were so short on cash that you had to get your owner's approval. Like, yo, this dude is really nice. Trust me, because you're going to have to give him a lot of cash like today when we draft him. And I remember asking Randy, he was a very young GM at the time, I was like, what gave you the conviction to take a chance on a left tackle so high at a time when it had a lot of tape? He was in a rotation a little bit at Florida State. I think he was a JUCO guy as well. And Randy just was like, Mike, when I watched this film, I didn't need no other opinions. I just said, that's what a left tackle looks like. That is what it looks like. That's simple. That was his logic. That is what it looks like. I don't need to know nothing else. I don't need nobody to talk to me. I know what an elite left tackle looks like. That's it. So we're drafting him. And so anybody follows Kai on Twitter, that's what I love. When you find a guy you love, you'll post his clips or whatever and say, hey, he is what they look like. I've always enjoyed that because it reminds me of like that's literally what an NFL GM made one of the best draft picks in franchise history off of that same logic. That's what it looks like. So let's take him. So I asked you ahead of time to give us some guys who fit he is what they look like for 2025, independent of position. So we're going to start with the O-line first because despite what John Snyder is going to do, they do need some guards and some centers. All right, so let's start with Tyler Booker, guard from Alabama, one of the guys on the list that you had of your 10 guys. So here's what they look like. Why is Tyler Booker what they look like at guard?
Well, first of all, he just has natural God-given size. Like when you look at some of these guys, they just look different than the other guys, even though they're 6'4". They're all 6'4 plus 300 pounds plus. Tyler Booker looks different. He's about 6'5". He lost a little bit of weight coming in the mid 320s, so he's slimmed down a little bit because after his freshman year into sophomore year, he was up in the 360s. He was playing up pretty high, but he got in shape. But he's just a road grader, man. You talk about physicality. Everybody's talking about the run game's coming back around, regardless of the scheme, which we'll talk about in a second. The run game is coming back around. And to really be efficient at the NFL level, you need guards that are going to be great at the point of attack and have some of that second level ability to get up to the linebacker. So he gives you some of that. I know a lot of people have some concerns about his athleticism. He wasn't the most explosive tester, but turn on the film. I always had to say, this is what they look like. He's what they look like when you watch the film. And I've had to kind of like rework my brain because I come up in the football background, playing football so long. You kind of learn to be as fundamentally sound as possible. You learn to be by the book as possible when you're training with coaches, right? There's a huge difference between a coach's eye and an analyst or a personnel's guy. Their eye is totally different because the coach wants a guy that's perfectly fit to his scheme, perfectly fit to his nuances, everything he likes. And then the analyst, the personnel guy that's scouting, he just wants to find the best players possible and then let the coach do his job in molding him into what that is. So Tyler Booker falls somewhere in between because he's definitely a man-power gap scheme type of blocker. He's going to be a guy that you want running those quarterback powers, those duo plays. You don't necessarily want him getting in space, or he may struggle a little bit on some of those wide zone plays where he has to cut off backside techniques and get up to the second level. However, he does show some of that on tape enough to where if you were a team that was predominantly running zone, you would be interested in a guy like Tyler Booker, especially if he somewhat falls out of the first round. If you can get him at the top of that second round or in the middle of that second round, you could just live with what comes with that because he is that good. So I love what he shows on tape. And I think he's just the nastiest player in the draft. You talk about regardless of position, talk about regardless of scheme. You want a guy that's going to be physically dominant. Turn on Tyler Booker's tape. He's what they look like.
Sticking with the scheme, and speaking of it, the Seahawks are moving towards that perimeter zone running style.
Clint.
With Clint Kubiak, that's correct. How does his playing style fit? You kind of mentioned it, but if you can go into more detail on how it'll fit perfectly with what they want to do and their offense.
Oh, I think he'd be fine at that. I mean, if you go back and watch some of that 2023 Alabama tape, they did a lot of zone stuff with Jahmyr Gibbs and a guy like that was really good at getting to the edges, getting to the perimeter. Even some of the 2022 tape with Jahmyr Gibbs and then the 2023 tape with Tommy Rees, it was a lot of zone principle stuff. I mean, you talk about with Jalen Milroe, there's a lot of zone read that comes with that, with blocking for a guy like that, on top of the power stuff that they do. So I think that there are better scheme fits in terms of this draft class, especially if you talk about some of the tackle guys that could potentially kick in the guard. But like I said, man, if you're going best player available there, or let's say they trade back back into the first round and they got one of those late first round draft picks, to me, he would be well worth the value there because he is so talented in other aspects. I think he's good enough there. And what he lacks in athleticism, he makes up for in that natural link that I talked about and that natural that natural grit where he just wills himself to the block. So I think he's a guy that definitely should continue to work on his feet. He should continue to stay at the weight that he's at because I think that'll be great for him because he's plenty strong, plenty powerful. But I think that he would be fine in that type of scheme.
John Schneider, take notes, man. He just gave you everything you need. Go for it.
Chris, go ahead. You take the next one.
All right. So Armand Membou, guard, Missouri, 6'4", 330. Elite athlete, 99th percentile 10-yard split, clocked in over 21 miles per hour. Mike's going to like this because I'm a screen guy. I can only imagine throwing a little screen and having being the first tackle in front of you. That just makes me excited. But can you explain how impressive that feat of that 99th percentile 10-yard split, and where it can be effective on Sundays with the Seahawks if they were to take him at 18?
Well, it just shows that short area burst, right? We know that offensive linemen, very rarely are you ever going to run 40 yards in a game. And if you're doing it, it's probably not a good thing. You're probably chasing after somebody on an interception, or probably, picked up a fumble and you don't want the ball in our hands. But he's a guy that I like a lot simply because of his youth. He's just turned 21. He's still due to this football stuff. He's still growing. And I think that's what we really like about a guy. I'm not comparing him to this guy. Please don't take, because I know people do this when you kind of say who they remind you of or who they could possibly be. I'm not saying he's going to be this guy, but he has some of that raw, God-given athleticism that Penn Sewell had when he was coming out. He has the same build as well. They're the same size, virtually identical in height and weight. And even some of the stuff that Membou did physically in the testing area was better than some of the stuff Penn did. So he's the guy that plays with that type of brute strength. He's an athlete. Like you said, he gets into the second level on some of those screen games and the second level in blocking, and he's a tone setter. You talk about a guy that, much like Booker in terms of that physicality, I think he's just a little bit more athletic. You'll see him get to the second level and dump one of those little guys, as opposed to Booker, like, blowing somebody off the ball that's 300 pounds as well. But Membou gets up to the second level, and he's physical, man. I think he adds to your scheme. You talked about the screen game. To me, and I've always said this when I'm watching, the difference between NFL and college football. If you ever want to look at the athleticism difference between college football and NFL, it's in the screen game. College football, a lot of those screens are busting out. You're getting massive chunk plays. You're getting massive plays like that. NFL, it's a lot harder to come by with those screens. That's why the guys like Ben Johnson and some of these West Coast guys, McVay and Kubiak, eventually he'll start working that in there. Get those screens in there and really start to develop that. That is a huge bonus at the NFL level. And he's a guy, Membou, that adds to your playbook, that lets you do some of that stuff. So I like him a lot there. And I'll tell you one thing. I was doing summer scouting last summer. He's the guy that really impressed me because, I watch a lot of these college guys, and they're so much more physically gifted. They don't necessarily work on the details, the finer details in terms of like punch placement, flashing your hands, the punch repertoire. He's a guy that even as he's learning, he's still learning the basics, but he already has some of that stuff. And that really excited me because this was 2023 LSU tape where he's flashing his outside hand. He's getting guys to react, and he's stabbing them with the inside arm. And I'm just watching him grow in real time. And he translated a lot of that over to this past season at Missouri. So I got really excited about him. And I'm not surprised to see him shoot up, but I'm kind of surprised people love him as much as I did. That he's like, now some people are saying he could go in the top 5 of the draft. I've seen him mock as high as 5 to Jacksonville. So the fact that people love him that much just shows how good that tape is, because outside of the testing, there's some other guys tested, pretty freakish. The tape is what gets people excited about a guy like Membou.
Kai, can one man save the screen game?
Oh my goodness, you're just talking Chris's language right now with the screen game, man.
Nah, one man can't though, because I tell you, like, watch some of the Bears tape from last year. They ran the hell out of screens, and it was just ineffective. I mean, you have to have the building blocks, and I think that's what makes like Ben Johnson and even McVay and some of those guys so proficient at it, is because they build off of everything. Everything is going to add up at some point, and it's hard to predict when that stuff is coming. So even when you do know it's coming, it's hard to stop it because they're so good at it. But I do love that you love the screen game, because to me it's an underutilized tool in the right way. Some people just spam it because they can't run the ball, so they have to throw the ball on the perimeter quick and get it out. But I'm talking about those perfectly timed screens that you don't see coming. It changes the game.
Yeah, Mike is. We've had a lot of discussion on the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast.
But hold on, let me add some context. Can I add some context to this game? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike and I have had a discussion because Mike is tired of the screen game, because when the Seahawks run it, to your point,
it's bad.
The Bears, it's very ineffective.
Thank you. Seahawks screen game is bad.
They hit on 2 or 3 per game. No, I'm kidding. 2 or 3 every other week. So the one screen game that was working was a tunnel screen, and that was basically getting the big men out in front. That was money. So I'm hoping that if they do go after Armand Membou, maybe they can find the screen game where it's not a tunnel screen, which by week 3 teams had figured out, and they were doing it against the Seahawks as a slap in the face, like, yo, your screen's pretty cool. We're going to actually stop you from doing it. But then on the other end, we're going to do it too. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, just because I'm with you, Kai. I'm big on it. The Seahawks aren't good at it, but maybe they get the right athletes on the field.
Cooper Kupp is a guy that can enhance that. I think he'll be a huge asset in that type of game, because, JSN, listen, you won't find a bigger JSN fan than me, but he's a guy that, operates out of the slot more than anything. You can't really run a lot of tunnel screens with that guy, even though he's the most sure-handed catcher on the team and probably could do some stuff after the catch. But with a guy like Cooper Kupp and JSN, you could definitely mix it up a little bit more, and you'll see Cooper, who's proficient at that when he was with the Rams.
There we go.
Yeah, but I think it was Matt LaFleur. Literally, the first play of the game against the Seahawks was the screen that Ryan Grubb had ran all year, and I can't think of a bigger play caller middle finger than to run that at somebody else's crib too. That was in Seattle. That was ballsy there. Last thing on Armand before we move on. Some people like him at tackle, some people like him at guard. I was talking to some people at the combine who are associated with the Seahawks. I was like, yeah, what do you think of the tackle from Missouri? One of them cut me off. He said, oh, you mean the guard? I was like, oh, okay, then that answers my question. Where are you on him? Do you have a preference on where you like to see him play in the pros?
He's a tackle. To me, and this is just the microcosm of this entire draft class, I think people are way too quick to write off people and throw them on the inside. Even going back, I mean, Rashawn Slater, when he came out in that 2020, 2021 draft, can't remember which exact year it was, but everybody was saying he's going to be a guard. But they didn't really know if he had the ability to stay on the outside. And to me, you watch that tape, he's what they look like. He just looked how it's supposed to look, and he had the prerequisite levels of size. The arm length is a huge discussion, and Armand has that, so that's not really a problem for him. But a lot of these guys, to me, are tackles. I don't believe in just throwing people inside because they don't meet a specific criteria. To me, I always look for the outliers. Like, don't focus on the numbers that tell you 80% of these people don't succeed. I want to look at the 20% of those guys that were successful, and does this kid match what those guys had? And a lot of these guys do. You talk about a guy like, Kelvin Banks, Will Campbell. To me, those guys are tackles as well because they look closer to what we had from the Taylor Lewans, the Donald Penns, Joe Thomas, Joe Staley, Rashawn Slater. All those guys are all pros or pro bowlers that had sub 34-inch arms. So look at what they did coming out. Look at what they did coming out of college. Are these guys close to that? And do you think that they can match that at the NFL level? To me, Armand is a tackle for sure, especially a right tackle.
There we go. I'm glad we got that. Rashawn Slater, 2021 class, by the way, first round. That grouping. All right, let's move on to tight ends that we have here. Interesting position group. I feel like Seahawks Twitter is slowly talking themselves in to falling in love with any one of the great tight ends that this class supposedly had. Let's start with Tyler Warren from Penn State. Why is Tyler what they look like?
Well, first of all, he has that God-given size that I talked about with the other guys. But to me, he's just like a freak in terms of I don't know how to explain it, and that's what makes me believe so much in it, is that he's just the guy. Like, you watch him, he reminds me of Jeremy Shockey coming out of Miami. He has some of that same ability in the intermediate and the deep ball. He catches everything. I remember watching him, I cover USC, and watching that game he had against USC was just like mind-blowing because he's a guy. I mean, it was the most catches ever for a tight end at the FBS level. He had 17 catches, I believe, like 220-something yards. And a touchdown, and it was a ridiculous touchdown on a trick play that had no business working. But you have a guy like Tyler Warren, and he just goes up and gets the ball. He just won't be denied. Outside of that, he is a very good route runner. I'm not saying he's a Colston Loveland level route runner, which we'll get to in a minute, or even some of the more refined guys. But he gets open. He's versatile. You can use him in a variance of ways, and that's what Andy Kotelnicki did with him at Penn State the last couple of years. He used them all over the place. But he's a guy to me that checks off every box. There's no real weaknesses there for him. And there's a lot of things that he does at an above good to great level that to me rounds him out. And I don't care if you have him tight end 1, tight end 2. To me, they're interchangeable. I know it's a huge debate in the community right now between those guys. But to me, Tyler Warren is a guy that will find a way to be productive, regardless of that scheme fit, regardless of the situation around him. He's going to be a guy that you can hang your hat on.
So this is how I knew this Tyler Warren kid was going to be something. I don't watch a ton of college ball during the season because I'm traveling on Saturdays quite a bit, obviously going to the Seahawks game. But sometimes there are just some guys who people will text me like, yo, Mike, I don't know if you're in the air. I don't know if you're at the crib, but I need you to turn on insert game here. An example, that guy who became a Seahawk was Ken Walker against Michigan. I think he had like 17,000 touchdowns or something like that against Michigan. The reason I knew Ken Walker was because somebody texted me, is like, Mike, I know you're probably busy or whatever, but you need to go find the Michigan State game because this Michigan State running back is going bonkers. And I bring that up because that happened this year with Tyler Warren. Somebody hit me and said, hey, Bo, the Penn State tight end is going crazy on USC right now. And yes, he had 17 catches, 224 yards and a touchdown. 228 total yards from scrimmage. I think he caught a pass, or I think he threw a pass in this game.
Did a little bit of everything, man.
Yeah, man, I know that dude is special. Let's talk scheme real quick on him before we move on to the next guy. This Kubiak Shanahan scheme, good fit, great fit. Where are you?
Yeah, I think it would be a great fit for them simply because he's a guy that can do what you need him to do. He's not beholden. He's not athletically limited. He's not, going to be a size problem either. He's going to be a mismatch for whoever he's going to be against. He can put his hand in the ground. You can move him and put him in some H-back type looks. You can kick him out wide. He's gone wide before. To me, he's the guy that, especially in a play action offense with the quarterback that's accurate. And I like Darnold a lot. I think Darnold, especially pushing the ball down the field a little bit, people kind of, shortchange him for his ability. He can get the ball in some tight areas, and he can get the ball, especially on the move. He does pretty well throwing the ball down the field. So I think that he'll be a great fit with a team like the Seattle Seahawks. But they do have some tight ends. I like the Seahawks tight ends. I don't know how they feel about their tight ends or y'all feel about them in the Seahawks fandom, but I like their tight ends.
Oh, I'm a big AJ Barner guy. He's grown on me as the season progressed. I told Mike coming in, I said he might be that guy that can block and he might, catch a few passes. And I think he was blocking really well all season. Going
Even
back and
Bobo's
watching it.
I like Bobo.
Yeah, Bobo. Yeah, he with his slow self, he can block too every now and then. But AJ Barner, he caught my eye, and I thought he had a really good rookie season. I'm looking forward for him developing next year and becoming even more of maybe a third down guy where, okay, Sam Darnold gets him ball in third and short or something, and using him in play action because he is a really good blocker when he gets downfield for sure.
Yeah, with me on the tight ends, I'm trying to talk myself into it. It's just a little tricky because John Snyder's done such a good job getting guys I like in like the 4th round. Between Will Dissly, between a Colby Parkinson and AJ Barner. That's 3 good tight ends on their rookie deals. Were worth a second deal somewhere else at least. Will got his second deal with the Seahawks. That was all 4th round guys, and so it's like, can I get a guy like later when John has such a problem getting other positions? John still has not. I don't think he's drafted a Pro Bowl edge rusher ever. Frank Clark made it after he was with the Seahawks, so Seahawks haven't had an edge rusher get double-digit sacks since Frank Clark in 2018. Still only 1 Pro Bowl lineman I think John Snyder's ever drafted, which is Russell Okung, and it's literally John's first draft. So it's more so I love tight ends. I think they're great for your offense, whatever offense you're running to, be quite honest. But it's for the Seahawks, I'm torn. I'm like, John, that'd be great. Like if they end up with Tyler Warren, I'd probably like it, especially if you cut on Tyler Warren film. You're like, oh, well, duh, this guy looks great. It's just kind of okay, maybe we needed somebody else there because you could get something I like in the 4th round. I'm still deciding on that. Maybe by the end of
this is a deep tight end class too, so I think you can get some really good players in that 3rd, 4th round. I will say this though, both of these guys, Loveland and Warren, are as good as any of the tight. Let's put Bowers in his own category because Bowers is Bowers. They're as good as any tight end besides him to come out in the last 5 years to me. I would say they're right behind Bowers 2 and 3, however you want to put them. I think they're that talented.
Let's go to Colston Loveland, a tight end from Michigan. Why is he what they look like?
To me, he's just a guy that is such a fluid athlete for the position. He has some wide receiver characteristics, really, when you look at him. I'll just read my notes from him from last year going into the season. He has 0 wasted movement and route running. He has rare acceleration, deceleration ability for a tight end. And I like, everybody talks about acceleration. Can you get up and down quick? To me, the deceleration for a tight end is more important because you're not going to be able to run past every safety, every linebacker. But if you can stop on a dime, cut, be swift and agile and cut side to side, you can make a lot of plays happen, especially after the catch. Those extra yards, you can get a lot of that. To me, that's where like George Kittle is rare, is that after the catch, he accelerates pretty good, but his deceleration and squeezing every yard out of every play, that's where he's great to me. And I think that Loveland has a little bit of that. And he's a space eater, bro. Like you can't play zone coverage against that guy. Go watch what they did against. Go watch his game against Oregon from this past season. He eats up that space and he finds the grass and he sits down. He's a quarterback-friendly target. He's a guy that I love in that aspect. And you're going to see a lot of that at the NFL level. He's going to be able to eat up that grass and really sit in those zones. He has that alignment versatility that kind of talked about with Warren. But Loveland is a guy, to me, that is a little bit more agile and straight line fast, where you can actually put him outside a couple times a game or line him up in the slot, and he won't be a negative there for you. He's a guy that can really make some stuff happen there, especially on some of these smaller nickelbacks that we get in the NFL nowadays. I think he'd be a huge mismatch in the slot against some of those guys, in the 40 going in some of those short yardage situations. And then he's just a plus blocker on the perimeter. I don't know where this notion that he can't block came from, but he's a guy that gets in there, he gets dirty, and he's a plus blocker on the perimeter, and he can do some really good things for you out there blocking as well.
See, I might fall in love with this class. See, that's the thing. Like, I just like special players though too. That's the thing. It's like if you special, like I think of the Lions draft class that was like Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta,
Yeah, Gibbs.
Brian Branch, Gibbs.
Yeah,
I
man.
forget which order they got all those guys. I think it went Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch. I think that was the way. So that they took a running back, an inside linebacker, and then a tight end, all within like the top 35 picks or something like that. And for fellow draft nerds, they're like, oh my goodness, this is
They
bad.
call it the worst class ever.
Right? Yeah,
I was like, bro, those are football players, dog. They're gonna be great.
And they are. They're all very good. Like they're all contributors on one of the best teams we've seen over the last couple of years. And so like I'm trying to get better at not getting caught up in where you get a good football player. Because at the end of the day, your value only let's say you wait on a guy who's a stud that you like get him in the 5th round. It's like that's great value. But if the 4 guys you took in front of him stink, the value is kind of just whatever. It doesn't matter. Like now you got a class where the only guy who was good was the 5th round pick. Because you wanted to waste your time trying to find values. I'm trying to get away from that. Just say, hey man, if that guy's gonna help you win, then you keep him, or you go grab him. I'm trying to teach myself that, and not teach myself because I know this in free agency too. But fans get caught up in, we got rid of this guy for this guy, and we saved X amount of dollars. But it's like last I checked, cap space has never caught a touchdown ever. Cap space has never sacked the quarterback. Like you need players on the field. On Sundays. So last thing on Loveland and that Oregon game that you mentioned, he had 7 catches for $112.
And it was nasty because if you watch their offense, he had 7 catches for $112 with a competent quarterback. And this is no disrespect. I won't crap on those guys because they went through a big transition after McCarthy left, and they played 2 or 3 guys that just weren't very good. He left. I won't say he left. The quarterbacks left at least 300 yards and a couple touchdowns on the field for him during this season. And that's only in the amount of games he played. I think he only played 10 games this season, but they at least left 300 yards and a couple, 2 or 3 touchdowns out there for him. If he gets to a quarterback that can get him the rock, he's going to be a guy that I think produces a lot very fast.
Now, to put a bow on the offense, we're going to close out. Now, to put a bow on the offense, we are going to close up shop with running back Ashton Jeanty. Dude rushed for over 2,600 yards, 29 touchdowns. Speed is chef's kiss, 4.42. He can do it all. But at 18, I'm not going to lie to you guys, especially Kai, especially since you're here to talk about these guys. I think the Seahawks should just pull the trigger. Could you imagine Ken Walker, Ashton on the same team? I feel that is a recipe for disaster for opposing defenses. Am I crazy for thinking that if he's available at 18, you should just take him? I guess this has come to be if he's available and he's the best player on your board, take him draft. But I just can't see a world where he does fall all the way to the Seahawks and the Seahawks don't take an opportunity on this kid. Am I bugging for saying if he's available, just go ahead and get him?
I understand exactly what you're saying. When I wrote down, I do like consulting on the side with scouting and stuff. I help out programs, teams, agencies, all that stuff, doing this stuff. And the Jeanty evaluation is like one of the easiest ones you could ever do. And I just say, like, when I talk about running back, to me, I think we're in the golden age of running backs. Like, I know that we had our time when everybody was running for 1,700 yards and more, and the running backs were putting up stats because it was such a heavy run game NFL. But you talk about the versatility, the depth, the amount of backs we have that are great. To me, what separates the Saquon, Gibbs, Derrick Henry level of guys from the middle of the pack and the guys that I really love, like a Najee Harris, some of those guys, the ability to turn what will be negative plays or plays at the line of scrimmage into positive plays, and the ability to turn standard plays, those 4 or 5 yards that you're going to get from a Najee Harris every time you need it. If you need 8, you're probably going to get 4 or 5. If you need 4, he's going to get you 4. He's that type of guy. But those guys like the Gibbs that can get you that 4, and he can squeeze out and turn it into a 50-yard touchdown. That's what separates the good players from the great players to me at the running back position. And Jeanty is a guy where I don't think I've ever seen a guy at the college level. We don't know what he's going to do at the NFL level yet. At the college level with that type of balance, he's the most difficult to bring down back I've ever seen at the college level. And I'm not saying in terms of elusiveness, because we've seen some elusive guys, right, that can just flat out make you miss. But if you talk about a guy that has contact balance, plays through that, gets to the second level, makes guys miss in those short areas, and then runs through you and gets those extra yards. Every yard that's available on the play Ashton Jeanty's going to get it, and he's going to get it in an efficient way. He's not going out of his way, reversing field. He's not a guy that's going to, try to beat you with speed every time. He's sticking his foot in the ground. He's getting every yard possible on every play. And I think, to me, that's what separates him from every other back in this very good running back class, is he's going to turn those negative plays into positive plays, and he's going to turn those average plays into touchdowns. And that's what separates him.
And I know Seahawks fans will be listening and think, Mike, Chris, like, yo, we got Ken Walker, we got Zach Charbonnet, we even got Kenny McIntosh, who's a dog, no pun intended, because of his alma mater. Like, what we doing talking about Jeanty? I'm like, hey, look, let me tell you something. That Jeanty eval, John Schneider, he gonna be thinking just like we talking about here. Ball players, get you a ball player. I probably wouldn't be a fan of it. I think part of it is, I just have a selfish anti-Jeanty sentiment a little bit because of so much of his great tape, and I knew it in real time too, is the Washington State game against my Cougs. Like, he looked generational. Like, he often looks generational, but that game, I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna be all over his pre-draft tape. Because what did he hit us for? He ran for, oh my God. See, this sounds fake. Listen to this. 26 carries, 259 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, man.
That was a disgusting display. And it wasn't like we was even playing bad defense, so to speak. We're just bouncing off them like children.
Right.
We look like children. And so now it skewed me because that was early in the year too. So I was like, I don't know if I like this Jeanty kid, man. He didn't hit my Cougs for $1 million, but he is special. He is what they look like. And he'll make I usually like to think of some running backs that can be like the cherry on top. Like, if you got the O-line and you plug in a Gibbs, now you're special. But if you got 4 bums up there and 1 good lineman and you plug in a Saquon, you get the Giants. Right? I feel like you got a Ferrari stuck in the garage. Like, so, but Jeanty's so special. And I saw that with my coach.
The Mountain West Championship game. You could put
Mountain West Championship game. He had 32 carries for 209 yards.
I remember that being like not a bad game. People were like not impressed by that at that point in the season. I remember that was in the thick of the Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty Heisman debate. And that game was like, he had a 200-yard game. People were like, that's not enough to get it done. That's how special he was this past season. So he's definitely a guy that if he is there, let's say he did fall to 18 for some reason, take him in a heartbeat. To me, there's no way that you couldn't take a guy like that at that position.
And so just for reference there, you're right. It is kind of ludicrous to poo-poo at a 200-yard game. And the reason why people can do that is because that was the 6th time he had hit 200 yards. They got 2. He's so special. People got 200-yard rushing game fatigue, which I didn't think was humanly possible. But no, that is exactly what happened. It was like, 209. We've seen that. And it was like, well, yes, literally, he has run for over 200 before. No, that dude, he is special. He is special. And it would not surprise me at all if the Seahawks, he's sitting there at 18 for whatever reason. They're like, you know what? We're just getting the best player available. That's exactly what he's the litmus test for some teams who claim best player available. Because if he's on your board, or if he's available past like pick 6 or whatever, past the Raiders, chances are if you're that team, he's probably the highest rated player on your board. Probably.
If he falls past 10, something's wrong. If Chicago doesn't take that guy and put him in that offense with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, something's wrong.
Oh man, yeah, it would not surprise me if the Seahawks do that, because he is, as we were discussing, what they look like. All right, let's switch to the defensive side of the ball here. The Seahawks defense was very good towards the end of last year. Finished as a top 10 defense by many metrics. Top 5 in the second half of the defense when they really figured it out. When Ernest Jones showed up in the middle of the year, just was playing lights out. So the first guy I want to start with is Jihaad Campbell, linebacker from Bama. And I'm glad we have an inside linebacker who's getting love right now, because we've had a couple, Chris, we've had a couple like deep dives in the inside linebackers the last couple of years, and it feels like they're just not getting no love. It's been hard for people to have first round grades on inside linebackers the past few classes. So Kai, why is he what they look like?
He's a guy that when you talk about freaks, right? You talk about freak athletes, you talk about Abdul Carter, some of those guys. But when you watch Jihaad Campbell play and the speed that he closes with at that size is pretty remarkable, especially when you realize he's been moved all over the place on that defense at Alabama. He's a guy that literally he played de facto defensive end a couple times in 2023 just because Alabama was short because of injuries and inexperience in places. He's a guy that gives you a little bit of everything. You talk about the perfect prospect. I'm not gonna say perfect player, but the perfect modern NFL prospect at linebacker is Jihaad Campbell, with his height, speed, weight, his ability to read and diagnose. And to me, that's still the level that he's growing at, and that's the scary part. He's so gifted that it looks like he has great anticipation skills at times. Really, when he's a step late, if you know what you're looking at. When he gets going and he really finally clicks at that, he was operating at that level close to the end of the season for Alabama. I think he's going to be one of the better linebackers in the NFL and pretty fast. To me, if we talk about best player available, you talk about, I haven't done a big board yet because I hate big boards because they change by the week based off of whatever Dane Brugler's saying or somebody saying people change there. But he's a guy that if I did one, he would be top 10 on mine. I would have him somewhere either 8th or 9th. And this is like when I was doing that still, I had Brian Branch coming out of Alabama. I had him 5th overall on my big board that year. And people were calling me crazy. But I'm like, no, watch the damn tape. Watch that LSU game for Branch. Watch that Kansas State game. And then he comes into the NFL as one of the best nickels in the league, one of the best safeties in the league this past year. I have that much belief and conviction in Jihaad Campbell as well. I think he's a guy that's still learning how to play through contact, but he's so fast and so strong that it just happens naturally. He doesn't even have the greatest technique and he doesn't have the greatest refined skill set yet. But you talk about freak athletes that can get to the ball, diagnose the plays well. And I think he's a guy that has that outside linebacker rush versatility. Well, you'll see their line up some of those inside linebackers and let them rush a couple times a game. Now, he's a guy that if he did that, to me, he would be one of the best rushing linebackers that we have in the NFL. I think he has that type of ability as well. So Jihaad Campbell is the guy that, to me, regardless of your scheme there, you'll find the home for him. Whether you play him at Mike, you play him at Will, play him at Sam, whatever you need for him to do. He's a guy that is athletic enough and such a football natural that he can go out there and do it. And I believe he'll be a impact starter year one, wherever he lands.
I think it was you tweeting some clips of Brian Branch in 2023 that had me, I think I mocked him into the first round for the Seahawks that year, I think at 20 or something. And I was getting yelled at by Seahawks fans. And I was like, I don't know, man, this guy just looks good. Like I'm trusting the people who know better than me. Deontay Lee, shout out Deontay's at the Ringer now. Former colleague at the Athletic, him too. He was like, "Yo, Brian Branch is the truth," and I'm like,
man.
If these two dudes are saying it, man, I'm believing it. And if you're saying Campbell's like that, I'm gonna believe it. I just am.
I was shocked when he fell out of the top 10. That's how much I believed in him. And I was talking to people when they said he was gonna be there, but I thought he would have been a perfect fit to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm kind of glad he didn't end up going there now because that would have been unfair if they had a guy like that. But then, hell, they got Cooper DeJean in the second round last year, so they ended up getting it. But no, I believe that much in Jihaad Campbell as well. He's a guy, to me, I know he had some shoulder injuries, and that was kind of the concern with Branch as well. Regardless of the scheme fit, he did have some injuries coming out of Alabama. So I don't have any concerns about that shoulder. As long as those legs work, Jihaad Campbell is going to be fine.
So one more thing on him, because I think what we're also seeing we're seeing this up front too, but in the NFL, while the running backs are kind of having their renaissance on offense, I feel like we're seeing that inside linebacker as well. Where there was a point there where they weren't getting valued as much as they probably should have, and now we're seeing teams whether it's a too high type of world that teams are living in. It's like, nah, I need my inside backers to be like grown ass men. I need a particular type of dog there. And it changed a little bit with the modern linebackers. Now guys ain't wearing neck rolls and stuff here, weighing 245 pounds. Why is Jihaad Campbell an ideal inside linebacker for what defenses want from those guys today?
Well, because he has the athletic ability to drop in the coverage. He has the instincts to read quarterback's eyes. Watch his tape. He gets some nice pass breakups to interceptions just reading the quarterback's eyes. And that's, that sounds simple. But when you have a guy that hasn't played, a position for that long, it's super advanced. That's super high level for a guy to come in and still have those type of instincts when he's dropping. He's not doing something that he's comfortable with, looking and re-diagnosing and going forward and making a tackle or blowing up a puller on the run game. He's a guy that still has that natural ability to do that stuff. But you talk about getting to his spots and his drops in coverage as well. Jihaad Campbell checks every box. And you'll hear me say that about a couple of guys. He checks every box. Whatever you need for him to do, he has the ability to do it, and he's shown it on tape. And I think that happens a lot when you have those guys that play at Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, what have you. They are trained as close as you can get to the NFL style, being able to do some of that stuff because they run some of the similar defenses, and you'll see him in those areas as well. So I like Jihaad Campbell as much as anybody in this draft in terms of being the best at their position. I think he's as much separation as I have with Travis Hunter and the number one wide receiver cornerback is as much separation as I have with Jihaad at linebacker. I think he's 2 or 3 pegs above the next linebacker in this class.
And I think he's the other litmus test for best player available, specifically for the Seahawks, because some teams just have a need there. But like if you just on paper watch the Seahawks, or not on paper watch them, but if you just watch the Seahawks or look at them on paper, they just paid Ernest Jones. He's only 25. Tyrese Knight was a tackle machine in college, comes in the league, turns into a starting caliber linebacker. You would think, okay, well, they don't need one, but here it is. Get good football players, put them on the field, let the rest sort itself out. I think he would be a great example of that for the Seahawks as well, where on paper it looks like they're set, very similar to tight end with Noah Fant, AJ Barner. But sometimes if you just get a guy, if you put him on the field, he makes your team better. Well, that's the job. Yep. If you're the GM, that's literally the job. Get guys on the field, make your team better. So that would be an interesting one. I'm starting to fall more and more in love with that pick as I transition for free agency to the draft prospects. Let's stay on, we're staying on defense, stay in the back seven. You got Andrew Mukuba from Texas, safety on here as well. Why is he what they look like?
Andrew's a guy to me that has just gotten better every year that I've seen him play college football. And to me, that's like a rare thing. I think, especially at the college football level, you'll see guys that'll make a pretty big leap from their freshman to sophomore year. And then that sophomore, junior year, sometimes the senior year, they're pretty much settled in their way, especially if there's no like schematic differences. You pretty much see what you get. To me, Mukuba is a guy that's gotten better. And when I talk about instincts, he has as good of instincts as anybody in this draft as a defensive back. He's a guy that reads quarterbacks extremely well. He's always where he needs to be. And you talk about consistency in his run fits, consistency lining up, getting other guys in line. And that's one thing I love watching on film is the guy vocal. Like, can he, if you see him, waving guys over to their spots. I remember Nakobe Dean coming out a couple years ago at Georgia. He was undersized. He had all those things to him, but he was a captain. When you talk about a leader on the field, he had that. You see it on tape. You see a ton of that with Andrew Mukuba. He's a guy that has those leadership ability. And to me, he has, when he ran his 40 time, it was massive because it confirmed what I saw on tape. Everybody was like, he's going to be a little bit slower. He's not going to run that great. I'm like, man, to me, this kid looks fast, especially coming downhill. And he come downhill fast. And when he reads, because I talk about those instincts, he gets to his spots fast as well. He makes those plays. He's a sure tackler. To me, he's a guy that'll be a really good, half field safety. A guy that you can let, really roam around and conduct the defense and be where he's supposed to be. He reminds me of a Logan Ryan. And to me, he's a guy that played a little bit of nickel as well, a little bit of corner, but ended up ending his career as a safety and had a really good end of his career, always around the ball. Mukuba's a playmaker in that aspect. He's always around the ball, and then he's in some capacity either run fits or, breaking up passes or getting interceptions. So he's a guy to me that I hate the word safe pick because there really is no such thing as a safe pick. You never truly know, but I'm following my instincts with this kid. I think he's going to be an impact player. I will take him mid-second round, even high second round for the right fit. But I think he's the guy that's going to, end up being a starter and a Pro Bowl caliber player down the line.
Oh, you mentioned the Eagles with Brian Branch. That sounds like an Eagle, but maybe it's a Seahawk. Hopefully, this is another position where you test your best player available thing. You wouldn't think that the Seahawks need safeties. Julian Love is he's a really good player, kind of a do it all type of guy. Julian, he's played nickel, he's played corner, he's played free, he plays straight, done everything. Kobe Bryant came on, in the second half. I love Kobe Bryant. Yeah, another ball player. just a ball player. That's what that's Kobe. And he said that once too. I remember asking him, because he was playing outside corner, Jim Thorpe guy, and then he gets put at nickel his rookie year, and he's taking on guards sometimes, when they do their big nickel stuff. I'm like, yo, how you doing that? He was like, bro, I'm a ball player. And not in an arrogant way, but he really was like,
no, that's the perfect answer, bro. Perfect.
Yeah,
answer.
That's what he said. That was his rookie year. He said that, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Let me get some more Kobe Bryants. You mentioned Logan Ryan. That when I hear that, like those guys who just do it, right. They just got it. They just got it in them.
Yeah, they're not the most gifted athletes. They're not the most physically imposing guys, but they're football players. They make great plays. And last thing before I throw it back on that, I had it in my notes. Texas played Michigan and Ann Arbor. They played Georgia twice. They play Ohio State, Clemson, and Arizona State in the college football playoff. And he was the best player in almost every one of those games. I think the Arizona State game, I think some other players flashed a little bit more. But you watch that first Georgia game against Texas, Andrew Mukuba was maybe the best player on that field. You watch the Michigan game in Ann Arbor, he was the best player on that field in that game. In the Ohio State game, played his ass off in that semifinal game. So you talk about a guy that played his best against the best, it was Andrew Mukuba this year.
See, I like it, Chris. I don't know where you're at on safeties, but I see, man. I'm talking myself into stuff that I don't think that you would say they need, but I just want some good players, man. I just like
Listen, the Ravens do it, the Eagles do it, the Chiefs do it. Look at the teams that are successful in the NFL over a long period of time. They're stacking up players even if they have them. All right. Look at the Eagles defensive back room. It's why they can lose Chauncey. It's why they can lose Josh Sweat on the defensive line. It's why they can lose all these guys and still be at the top because they stockpiled them. Nolan Smith is ready to go now. People talked about the fit early. People talked about his growing pains, but now look at him. He's dominating in the Super Bowl, and now he's ready to take over and be the guy. So stockpiling talent is never a bad idea.
I think the Seahawks might be trying to do that, especially when you look at the edge. They just added DeMarcus Lawrence, and if he's healthy, that could be a problem. Not to mention Uchenna Nwosu. Hopefully, he will be back for the start of the season next year. And then you got the backups. You got Boye Mafe backing up DeMarcus Lawrence, and then you got Derek Hall, who he's a freak athlete. He can do it all. He can stuff the run, and he can get to the quarterback. But then when you look at some of the prospects for the NFL draft, you got Shemar Stewart, edge out of Texas A&M, 6'5", 267. Elite athlete, and I know you've seen the tape. The tape is great athlete. 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons. Where is the production, Kai?
I think people should just take that with a grain of salt. You look at Texas A&M's defense. Look at Georgia's defense. How many guys from Georgia over the last 5-6 years have produced at an elite level in terms of statistics? Not very many at all. You look at the same with Texas A&M's defensive line. It's a product of the technique. It's called surf technique. What they're doing a lot of times, they're basically holding the point of attack, reading and reacting, make sure there's no outside runs hidden, make sure there's nothing in their gap, and then they react and go make a play because they have better athletes than everybody else at that stage, and they play such a unified system behind that. Everything is connected at that level, especially in those schemes more than a lot of defenses in college where you could just run free or you got a guy that could just let it go and get after the quarterback. You don't really see that a ton with these defenses, and it's a product of why they're so good up front. You look at Texas A&M, you look at the Alabamas, you look at the Georgias, why they churn out so many guys every year is because they have such good defenses that they learn and they get better and grow at those things. To me, Shemar Stewart is a safe, I hate that word safe pick, but that phrase safe pick, but he's a safe pick because he's so damn good at the fundamentals. He doesn't have to learn how to play football. And he gives you all that athleticism and that disruptiveness because he is such a gifted athlete and he has those God-given abilities that you cannot coach or teach. You're getting a refined football player that can still go up another notch in terms of just getting better at the details of the game. But he's a guy that's going to be impactful because of that ability and because of that technique that he has. You talk about holding a point of attack against the run game. He's great at it. Even if the ball's going away from him, he's a disciplined player and he has that ability. To me, like you said, the production, 4.5 sacks or whatever, but getting to the quarterback and disrupting the game to me is as impactful as sacks. I'm not one of those guys that say sacks doesn't matter and that pressures are everything and hurt. To me, that's stupid. I hate when people say that, but it is impactful on the game. You do need to get guys on the ground, but a guy that can get flushed out of the pocket on a pressure and throw an interception is just as valuable of a play. And then, some of those advanced metrics, that weighs way more than the sack would on those plays. So he's a guy that gives you all of that and a guy that I'm very excited to see. I have him. I did a mock draft and I had him slotted at 7 to the Jets. I think he's that good. He shouldn't make it out of the top 10 to me.
Wow. So if he's available at 18 for the Seahawks and you were the GM, you're not wasting time.
Especially when you talk about you haven't had 10 plus stack ability in so long. I don't think that many guys have had that ability to go do that. Shemar Stewart is a guy that has that ability, especially if you have some of those monsters on the inside with Leonard Williams and Tank Lawrence, so you can move him around a little bit. Which Leonard Williams, off topic here a little bit. I was pissed that he didn't get more All-Pro love last year because he was fantastic last year. But he's a guy that's playing at the that was the best season of his career, in my opinion. If you can get him in a situation like that with other rushers where he can not be gassed at that fourth quarter of games, I think Shemar Stewart would be a fantastic pick for a team like the Seattle Seahawks. Anybody at that range, because I think he's that talented.
Okay. You had something, Mike, before I go to the DBs?
Yeah, to that point about Georgia and their scheme, I think that that was something that came up with Trayvon Walker when he was the first pick as well. He didn't I think he had like 6 sacks or something like that final year. But now he's a double-digit sack guy in the NFL.
Yeah, back-to-back seasons.
Back-to-back seasons as a double-digit sack guy, and I bring that up too. I mentioned that the Seahawks haven't had that at an edge rusher since 2018. You get a guy
do it with the flash that you talk about with these double-digit sack guys. He's the same kid that he was at Georgia. There's just a few more games now, and he's grown as a football player because he's a little bit better and a little bit older. But the same stuff that he was doing to get open at Georgia, the long arms, holding the point of attack, read and react, getting on those skinny shoulders on offensive linemen, is the same thing he's doing with the Jacksonville Jaguars, man. So to me, scout the player and look at what he's great at from a football perspective over the stat sheet, because there's a ton of guys. But if we just went off of stats, Antoine Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech, I think he had like 16 and a half sacks this season. He would be a top 10 pick based off of the production if the production was that important. So as long as they have a little bit of both, and to me, the tape matches the athletic profile, and he's going to get some more production in the NFL level. So I love Shemar Stewart. I think he's really a damn good football player.
Yeah, Jalen Carter, that was a thing that came up with him too. I think only 3 sacks in each of his final 2 seasons at Georgia. Don't think that's a problem for Jalen getting to the quarterback. It is not. Like sometimes, like you said, just watch the tape, take the good ball players.
Yep.
Getting back to the DB room, we'll look at Will Johnson, quarterback out of Michigan. He is what they look like. What stood out to him when you watched the film on this young man?
To me, he's just the quintessential press man, soft band coverage cornerback in the NFL. I hate to make those one-on-one comps, but if you're looking at a mold of what he could be at the next level, Patrick Surtain Jr., the Defensive Player of the Year 2024, he could be a player that I don't know if he's as good as Pat. I think Pat's a little bit more stout, against the run and kind of being a factor in the run game, even though he doesn't get targeted a ton in the passing game and the ball doesn't come to him a ton. Coming out of Alabama, he was just a little bit more physical, I believe, than Will Johnson. But if you talk about those same type of, mechanics, almost robotic in a good way, I know that could be used as a negative in football, but he's robotic in a good way. He's a guy with those instincts. You hear me talk about that a lot. I love players that are smart. And, I don't want to just say instincts all the time, because I think that shortchanges some of these guys' study habits and the way that they love the game to learn this stuff. And it really is a process of the homework that they do to get into the game and can just react. But he's a guy to me that does have those natural instincts as well. Great technique, is impressed man. I think he's a little bit better off the ball, off man a little bit. If you can really get him in a situation like that, where he can use those instincts and use that natural length that he has, because you can't coach that 6'1", 200 pounds at cornerback with that fluidity. He's a guy to me that's going to be – I'm going to hold back because I don't want to give the guy too much gas and then he gets in there, gets burnt first year. But I think he's a guy that's going to be impactful. He should not make it out of the top 10 to me. I know there's been some chatter people falling off of him a little bit. I don't understand it, especially when, to me, Travis Hunter, we'll talk about him. He's his own thing, right? But if we just go off of cornerbacks and you take Travis Hunter out of the equation, there's nobody even close to Will Johnson in this draft class to me in terms of next level ability, being ready to play. I like some of these other guys, and I think that with the testing that they had, they boasted themselves, and they probably get into the first round, back half. But Will Johnson is a top 10 player in this draft. He has been since he was a freshman at Michigan. And to me, it's a classic case of prospect fatigue. There's nothing not to like about the guy. So I don't understand why we're talking ourselves in a circle about him. Maybe if he would have run a 40, people would have shut up and make him feel a little bit better. But turn on the tape. He does everything right. He's great with his technique, great with his instincts, and you can't teach his size at that cornerback position. And he has the reps, and he played a ton of football in his 3 years at Michigan in a high-level scheme, playing with Wink Martindale, where they sent the house a lot. They were very aggressive blitzing. So he had to, play a lot of man coverage. And go watch him what he did against Marvin Harrison Jr. I know Marvin Harrison won his fair share, but he went, top 4 for a reason as well. Will Johnson got his too, and got some interceptions in that game and looked really good. You go watch him against, these guys that he played this past season and those guys at Texas. Will Johnson, they didn't want to throw the ball at him. That says a lot when you have Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond. You have some of those guys, Ryan Wingo, who's a fantastic freshman that we'll be talking about in 2 years coming out. They didn't want to throw the ball at Will Johnson. That says a lot about his ability. So to me, I hate that safe pick phrase, but he's a guy that if I was working and this was my job, this is my livelihood, I would, be comfortable putting my job in a guy like that because I have that much belief in his ability.
Well, shoot, let's just go ahead and do this. The Seahawks do end up taking this young man at the 18th pick, Will Johnson, that is, excuse me. How could he elevate that Seahawks DB room or play with? Because now you're looking at Reek Woolen when he's locked in. Obviously, he can be one of the best. Spoon, we already know where he's headed. He's already proven to be one of them dogs.
That's
and then I think, honestly, he might just, if he is that dude, he ends up being that starting left corner over Josh Jobe. How could that secondary look?
It could be one of the best secondaries in football. I mean, it's point blank period. He would be. There is no, and Jobe is a Bama kid, and I love my Bama guys. I'm gonna be honest, but there would be no debating. Will Johnson is the guy day one, point blank period, and he elevates that team tremendously because he allows you to be more versatile in your scheme and the way you attack, the way you deploy those guys, and especially the defensive linemen. They say coverage sacks are a big thing. To me, it works hand in hand. You get a guy that gets the ball, the guys up front that will make the quarterback get the ball out of his hands faster. The guy like Will Johnson is going to benefit from that because of those instincts that I talk about. And then you talk about Will Johnson covering the vertical pass, taking away a portion of the field with his ability, or just the threat of throwing to him. People don't try guys like that a lot. And you get the guys up front, they have more time to go out there and get the quarterback. So to me, it works hand in hand. If they were able to get a guy like that, it would benefit them. I mean, that could be as impactful of a draft pick as any in the draft from a defensive perspective, at least, because that could free up the Seahawks in a big way.
Yeah, Spoon, another guy who here's what they look like as well. That was very clear at Illinois. Somehow we did our beat writer mock draft at the Athletic, and I know we're all not GMs, obviously, but I was able to get Will with the 18th pick. I remember just like before I did it, I'm like, I scanned our list. We have like a master list of when people would take their picks. I read the list probably like 20 times to make sure I wasn't going to send the name in. And one of our editors hit me like, nah, Mike, the Jets already took him at 7. You know that, right? Like, I'm like, okay, no, I double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked. It's like, oh, I get this dude. Oh yeah. Sign me up. I'm a big, I think it's really great. Obviously, if you're so good, you don't get thrown at, duh. But everybody gets thrown at. This is, everybody gets thrown at eventually. Don't care who you are. What happens when that ball comes your way? What do you do with it? And that's where I'm like, okay, yeah. Sign me up for that. But I have a quick follow-up question though about Will, because he takes a lot of interceptions to the house, which is great. Though I feel like there's like two brands of that. There's like the guys who give you the down-to-down consistency and they make it shake when the ball comes, and then like there's Marcus Peters or like there's Trayvon Diggs. There's guys who, Deron Bland, these guys who, all right, we might get me a pick 6, but can I guarantee that the next time you're thrown at is not a 67-yard bomb? Probably not. A little volatile. Where is Will Johnson on let's call it the Marcus Peters spectrum for the sake of this discussion? Where does Will Johnson fall on that spectrum?
He's as close to the first example as possible. He's a guy that is extremely reliable snap to snap. He gives you that stuff that I talked about, because it's just, like I said, it's not more so based off of quarterback a mistake or anything schematic. It's his instincts. He reacts and he has the ability to go get the ball. So he is still doing that from a technically sound position. He's a guy that does that because of those instincts that he has naturally. So to me, he's a guy that you can count on snap to snap. They don't throw the ball to him a lot, but he is a good tackler. I like to see him come up and make plays. Because he is much more physical than people give him credit for. That's not necessarily a phrase that you, or a descriptor that you hear for cornerbacks, but that's a part of the reason why I love Spoon so much a couple years coming out, because he comes and hits. He loves that contact. And I think Will Johnson is not the same in that aspect, but he is a guy that can come lay the wood at times, and he has done that. So I like to see him come and really tackle in space, and he does a good job of that to me. And like I said, man, he checks the boxes. He's a very clean, easy evaluation. And if he fell to 18 and they didn't take him, people should be fired.
So
I'm sorry, I get you in trouble. I might get you in trouble, but
no, you good. We love making it sound like
he should be fired anyway. But if he makes it 18 and they don't take him for that defense, that's crazy.
No, we talk like that all the time. Sometimes, because I like your point about like that's how it should be when you have conviction. Like, hey, I'm willing to fire you if this doesn't work. Are you good with that? And you're like, yeah, let's go, because I'm gonna get paid. You're gonna extend my contract because it will work. Like that is how these guys talk sometimes. And that I love framing it that way. That's how you can really express your conviction in a guy. And some of these dudes we're talking about, like you're saying, this guy shouldn't get out of the top 10. I will say this: I just came back from the owners' meetings in Palm Beach, in Florida, and one of the takeaways that I had coming out of there, I didn't write about this because it's more of a tidbit than something Seahawks related per se, but the kind of chatter out of there was picks 9 through, let's say, 40. You're gonna get teams that have very similar grades on all these type of guys. Like it really is an eye of the beholder draft in a lot of ways, where somebody might say that's a top 10, like they might say this Shemar Stewart kid is a top 10 pick guaranteed. Another team might be like, I would love him at 36.
Yeah.
You know, not to say the team is wrong, but that's kind of how this draft goes. So yeah, we might love a guy. We might love Will Johnson. Say he shouldn't even get past Pete Carroll, which he probably won't. But there might be another team who's like, you know what, I would love him at wherever the Texans are picking. D'Amico Ryans might love him. So that's also I want to do this exercise too, because just never this class really is a weird one. It seems like everyone's all over the place. Maybe that's because some of these GMs are young and mixing with some of the long-time GMs. You know, I ran into the Jags GM. He my age. I was like, he ain't had no facial hair, nothing. And I was like, yo, how old are you? He was like 34. I said, it looks like it. So yeah, this class, some of these guys who like may feel like obvious top 10 picks and they maybe should be, they might be available at 34, 35, 36, 37 because of how teams are just viewing this all over the place.
Very possible. And I'll say that because I think you'll see a lot of movement on draft night, the first night. I don't think it's going to be, you know, everybody's talking about people aren't going to give up premium picks to go up. And I think that's true. But once you get into that 15 to 32 range, I think you'll see not a lot of movement, but I think you'll see a couple teams come up for the guys that they really have that conviction about, because I think there are some diamond. I don't want to say diamonds in a rough. I think there's flat out really good ball players that are kind of getting looped into this conversation because the amount of quote unquote blue chip prospects is rare. But to me, that's how it should be. Like if we're using blue chip properly, I think it's kind of gotten convoluted over the last few years because if they're not like a Jamar Chase or a guy that everybody pretty much believed in coming out, like a Penei Sewell, they kind of get thrown into, is this guy worth the first round pick? And to me, that's the wrong way to look at it. If you can get really good football players, think about how hard it is to find an above average starter at any position in the NFL. And then you'll have guys saying, oh, I think he'll be a pretty good starter in the NFL. Let's try to get him in the middle of the second round. I'm like, do y'all hear what y'all are saying? It's hard to find those guys.
Right.
And if you have it at that position, we talk about best player available. And if you feel like this guy is the best player available and he could give you that above average to good starter play, to me, that's absolutely worth the first round pick. And I'm much less concerned with the overall traits for certain positions. Quarterback, I understand that you need to have those traits. Some of those, positions like cornerback, if you don't have that fluidity, that change of direction and those hips, I can understand that. But we talk about traits for like guards and Tyler Booker. No, why am I talking about what his 10-yard split is? I don't care. Like, he's a great football player. Let the kid play football. So I do think you'll see some people move up in that late first round to get the guys that they do feel convicted about.
No, and that makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, let's say, like, I know the Seahawks are very stingy with how many first round grades they give out.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't surprise me if John Schneider this year has like a single digit number on them, to be honest. I know he's had that before. I think the most he's had is somewhere in the teens, like at first round grades. So let's say you are a team like Seattle and you only have 11 first round grades on prospects. Yeah. Well, if you're starting to see, all right, there's only one left. The Niners are on the board at where the Niners pick. The Niners pick at 11. Let's say that they take a guy now between you and Dallas, between 12 and 17. There's only one guy you have left with a first round grade. You might call the Dolphins and say, "Let me come up."
Yeah,
because otherwise you're just like, well, now we have to move back because we ran out of first round grades. I think a lot of teams are going to be in that boat where they're like, "Yo, we're Pittsburgh. Man, Pittsburgh doesn't have a lot of capital, but we're Denver or something." We only have 13 first round pick grades, but we're picking 20. Right. When the Colts are on the board, we might call them, say, yo, I want to come up, because otherwise we're going back, because the goal is to get the good football players, particularly maybe a quarterback, whoever. So I think there's going to be some movement too in that range where teams are like, let me just get the last first round grade guy I have left.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm moving into the early second, whatever it is. So yeah, I anticipate some movement as well. Let's get to our last guy. This would be a pipe dream if he falls to Seattle, but I just love talking about him. Let's get to Travis Hunter, cornerback / receiver at Colorado. Had their showcase, just earlier. Why is he what they look like at whatever spot you want to take that? Just go ahead.
Well, this is an interesting conversation to me because I've been, staunch in my belief that he is a wide receiver at his best position, and this has been my position for a long time. But I do think the value of cornerbacks is going to surpass that of a wide receiver for Travis Hunter. He's probably he 100% has more value as a cornerback than a wide receiver. But I think he wants to play more wide receiver than cornerback on the next level because of the money, for one. And for two, I think it's an easy transition. I think Dion did say something pretty interesting today that I hadn't thought about. And he said that he believes he should be practicing majority offense wherever he goes because he's still learning and adapting there to that position. And cornerback, where whatever he's going to be playing is extremely easy to him. You're going to be playing man coverage. You're going to be playing in some zone, some cover 2, cover 3 stuff. He knows that like the back of his hand. Schematically, getting the playbook down of an offense would be the biggest transition for Travis Hunter on the next level. And I thought that was super interesting because to me, he's a guy that you don't have to make the scheme difficult for. Throw him a couple slants a game, throw him a couple screens a game, throw him a couple deep balls a game. It's extremely simple for a guy like that to get him the ball. And the fact that we can even talk about him like that is why he's what they look like, because he's exceptional at two different. And I hate the whole people like snaps are not a stat thing. Yes, the hell it is. Like, that's why they record that stuff, because it is extremely difficult to not only, it's one thing to play those snaps. It's another thing to be dominant and have an impact in all of those snaps. And that's what Travis Hunter does on both sides of the ball. I'd never seen anything like it. I didn't think it was possible. So he's like rewired my brain in terms of how to look at the position that he's doing it, because we saw Champ Bailey, we saw Chris Gamble, we see some guys that dabble. I hate when people bring up Jabril Peppers, and that's no disrespect to him, but he ain't do. It's not even close to what Travis Hunter is doing. Like even Charles Woodson and Champ Bailey had the bend the knee, and they both said that this kid is doing something that we never did. And to me, that's what makes him what they look like, is that we have literally never seen anything like this before. And the ease at which he does it is what's like fascinating to me, because to me, you see guys, I didn't think it was physically possible. He looks like he's just having fun. Like, it's the fourth quarter, he's cussing Shadur out because he's not throwing on the ball on a deep ball, and he's running for nothing. Like, he's that type of guy. And I think that you just find a home for him, regardless of scheme. He could play press man coverage. I think he's like exceptional off ball, and just letting him use his natural ability and his feel. He's done it a couple times, but at TCU where he had that interception where he just reads the quarterback on the goal line and gets that interception. And then the UCF game where he takes away the inside route, and then he sags off, and then he reacts and comes in and breaks off and takes the third route and picks it off. That's type of stuff. Like, you don't see that at the NFL level. You don't see NFL guys doing that. Like, you don't see college guys especially having that type of ability, instincts. Maybe if your brain tells you like, oh, this is what's coming, but you can't physically get there and do it. Travis is getting there, and he's beating the ball to the spots at a lot of time. And I've never seen that before in terms of such a refined player on both sides of the ball. And people shortchange his route running ability. I know people kind of making fun of him for some of those routes that he was running today at their pro day. But I was like, man, I don't think people really pay attention. Like, are y'all watching what Stephon Diggs does? Stephon Diggs destroyed Marshawn Lattimore on the goal line running that exact same route. Like, it might look funny a little bit, but it's actually functional. You look at it next level, there's some of these 4 or 5 step routes that people are doing that takes a lot to get open, but the athletes are capable of doing it. And Travis is that guy on offense. So I don't know how people aren't like enamored with this guy. The fact that he's like talked about as a third, fourth pick, maybe, like, to me, he's clearly the best player in this draft. Like, I love Abdul Carter, I love Shadur, I love Cam Ward. Travis is like a tier above everybody to me. Like, he's by far running away the best player in this draft.
If anybody says that snaps aren't a stat, tell them go play snaps.
Bro,
and you tell me how you feel after you do it.
At corner and receiver too. Like, he's just running all game. Like, he's covering deep routes, and then he's running the deep routes. Like, go do that. That's ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it, man. It's truly remarkable.
Wow.
Yeah, man. I mean, that UCF interception I don't even think he's on the screen of the broadcast copy. It just comes out of nowhere. Next thing you know, he's got the ball. And if that was a pros, he would have scored a pick six. He had to dive to get it.
I think he had like 98 yards receiving that game or something too. Like, crazy. Like, that's the type of stuff he does.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Tariq Woolen, about like the idea of playing both ways, because Rick obviously played receiver at UTSA and switched, and he was just like, we were both kind of just blown away by the fact that he can just do it at altitude. By the way, in Colorado, like, speaking of the cardio and running he's doing, no, it's incredible. It is incredible. Chris and I have talked about on this show. I'm actually a pretty big proponent. Guys can't do it, but I just love the idea of guys just playing more both ways. Maybe it's not full time like Travis can do, but I just love to see what's that Patriots DB that I think he caught a swing pass for a touchdown. And Marcus Jones,
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
I think.
Jones.
Yeah,
Jones.
because he's just he's just a good
Yeah.
player. Like he returns punts, he can cover. Clearly, if you give him the ball, he can make. I just love that. You know, whoever it is. Like I remember one time one of my stories I did at the Athletic. I went to everybody in the locker room. I said, if you could switch positions, what would you go to? And just hearing the thought process on some of these guys. Now, half of them said quarterback for the money, which, hey man, I got kids too. I understand. I understand. I understand it. But the guys who went into it for the skill set reasons was amazing. And it got me thinking about Jadeveon Clowney playing free safety or Bobby Wagner playing running back or with some of the other answers that I got. It was incredible stuff. And then now it's like, Travis, you don't have to imagine. It's literally doing both.
Right.
No, it's some of the craziest stuff I've ever seen, man. So, Chris, I think we need to, if Seahawks were somehow to move up or something to get Travis, oh yeah, that's good content.
That'd be crazy.
Right there. No, he is what they look like. Was that our last guy? That was
the last guy, man.
Man, no, Kai, you've talked me into like at least like 3 guys today. I think so. I don't know. Is it Chris? Did he talk you in anyone today? I know he got me on at least like 3
how
guys.
about I just be honest? At least six guys where I'm like, all right, Seahawks, stop playing, man. He just gave you the green light. Go ahead, make the move, man. Go ahead and get Kai out there. Like, yeah, I'm the new GM of whatever team because I know ball.
Now, sometimes it is as simple as just like, is he a good football player, man? Then you take him. If guy gets hurt or something like that, is whatever. But like, it's just, is he a good football player? Forget what you need for a second, because like everybody needs good football players, and that's just, you can't win games without them. I don't care what your scheme is. You Kyle Shanahan, you Ben Johnson, you know, whatever. Yep. So, all right, Kyle, the floor is yours. You got anything you want to plug? Social media, any stories, just anything that you got working on, or just want people to say, hey, come check this out. Floor is yours.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, at Kyron Samuels, same right here. And you'll get all that stuff, all my writer profiles and the player evaluations. I post film cut-ups all the time, stuff like that. So everything that I'm working on and doing, you can find it there. I post a lot and very interactive on that. So simple, man. You can find all my stuff there, man. I just appreciate you guys having me on because I like to yap about ball, man. It is fun to talk about football. So I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
No, man, we appreciate. We love talking ball on here, man. That's the thing. We need ball knowers because there's too many people. I know I'm saying this as someone at home with a microphone, but there's just too many now. It's oversaturated now. Yeah. It's just too. And I do think we're getting caught up. We mentioned it with Shemar a little bit on like some of the analytics, or even it's draft season, so we're getting caught up on like how Will Campbell's arm length and just other stuff. And it's just, I just love people like, yo, watch them play football. I don't think there's a more predictive way to. Nothing predicts how a guy will play football more than watching him play football. You know, like we can watch him run, watch him throw on air, we can, you know, test him, whatever. Just watch him play football. That'll probably tell you how it looks when you ... ask him to play football. You know, if I overcomplicate the draft process a little bit too much, you need to go like the NBA, maybe give y'all like a couple weeks between the end of the season and the draft and let it rock. So thank you, Kai. Great stuff. Make sure you guys go follow him on whatever Elon Musk is calling that app these days. Appreciate you guys listening to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast. I'm Mike. That's Chris. Make sure you guys follow us on Blue Sky, X. What else we got, Chris? Instagram, TikTok. Yep. Am I missing anything?
That was it.
All right. We appreciate all the love and support. You guys have a good week. We'll catch you guys with some more draft content before the big day. I think it starts late April. So stay tuned until then. Peace.